Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this 16th webinar of the COVID Leadership Series by EGADE Business School. My name is Ignacio de la Vega. I serve as Dean at EGADE Business School and at the Undergraduate Business School at Tecnológico de Monterrey. And it's a great pleasure being here today with a group of friends. We're gonna try to have a nice conversation on what's going on the business education industry, but also what's happening in our societies and how can we, from our responsibility, have an impact in solving, supporting, helping navigate this situation. So we're going to be discussing with a group of colleagues how we are envisioning business education today, how we are looking at leadership in a post-COVID era that, by the way, has already started as the future. I'm getting a sign that my internet connection is not very good. I hope it's working decently. And how governments, institutions, universities, and industries are getting prepared, even navigating in these not very clear waters that we are all suffering. At Tecnológico de Monterrey and at the EGADE Business School, we made the move to an online teaching model already 52 days ago in early March. And since then have been trying to find out the best solutions to serve our students and our communities today, but also to support this COVID world in Mexico and in our societies. So let me introduce my friends and today's panelists. So we have with us David Bach. David is a Deputy Dean for Executive Programs and Professor in the Practice of Management at Yale School of Management. And I had the pleasure of meeting and working together with David in many occasions throughout our careers, starting some years ago at IE Business School. And now we're partners at a great consortium of business schools, which is GNAM Global Network for Advanced Management. Welcome, David. Thank you for making it. Pablo Martin de Holand. Pablo, also a longtime friend. Pablo is the Dean of HEC Paris in Qatar. And he's also teaching strategy and entrepreneurship. Again, we have a long time relationship, and we've been veterans at IE, played some wars at Babson College in a few projects all over the world, in the region, in Saudi. And HEC is also a member of GNAM, these marvelous consortiums to which all of us belong. So thank you, Pablo. Gracias for making it.
Thank you very much, Ignacio.
And Dominique Turpin, Dominique, also a longtime great friend. Dominique is the Dentsu Chair Professor of Marketing and the Dean of External Relations at IMD in Switzerland. As I mentioned before, an all-time friend, former dean, partner, member, and colleague also at the GNAM Consortium. In short, a group of friends having a fireside chat. But if we look at Monterrey, we have something like 35 Celsius. Let's call this an air conditioning side chat, could probably be more proper. And we get started. So as we all know, we're going through very troublesome, but exciting also times, challenge and opportunity with implications for all of us as human beings, for all the industries, in our societies, definitely for our institutions. A pandemic that is starting or started as a health pandemic with two large metastases coming, the economic and the social one, and with implications that today we don't even understand probably for the short, medium, and long term in our teaching and learning and in all our societies. We also learning a lot from the leadership perspective, and this webinar series is around leadership and lessons learned from COVID and how we can support what's coming to our society. So a lot of lessons already left by COVID, how we as businesses need to coordinate efforts, so a much more cooperative time coming, how these the stability of the entire society is crucial to the economy, to our well-being, and what is our role here, and probably the coming of a new time of purpose, the moment of truth for what already in 2020 in Davos, we were calling the year of purpose. So, colleagues, let me first hope that your communities, your families, you guys are doing well in the midst of this unexpected event. And please tell us, how are things in Qatar? How are things in Switzerland? How are things in Connecticut to get started? So maybe Dominique?
Well, like every country, we have been hit very hard, especially because Switzerland is very close to Italy. So we had a major breakout about 2 months ago, and the government decided to ask people to stay at home. However, the conditions that we have here in Switzerland are less strict than they are in other countries like France, for example, where people cannot even go out of their home without having a formal paper. But the numbers of cases actually in Switzerland has been pretty high. If you take the numbers of cases related to a 1 million population, we'd probably be among the top 5 in the world. This being said, we are starting to reopen shops this week and next week. Schools are going to be open. So we are slowly moving into action. There's always, and I'm sure we are going to talk about that, the pressure between, the health of the people and the economic implication. So things are getting a little bit better. As you know, in Germany, they started to open, businesses. I think David, who is German, will confirm. But I think you're starting the football, the soccer championship. And it's also interesting to see that in countries like Denmark, Sweden, the government has kind of, let the disease spread out. But from the latest information I got from Sweden today, things are getting worse. So, it was easy to ask people to stay at home. It's very complicated, I think, for everybody to plan, how we are going to re-engage the economy, re-engage the business. So, very, very complicated situation.
Thank you, Dominique. Maybe we move to Pablo. Pablo, how are things in Qatar? In Mexico, we're expecting that the heat and summer is going to slow down the pandemic. Can you confirm and send us some good news from Qatar?
Yeah, listen, I mean, I have been doing a couple of these webinars already, and I would like to start with a very optimistic note. The world has had many pandemics, and we have survived, and we're going to survive this one too. The best and the brightest minds in the world trying to find a vaccine and a cure. So we will get out of this one. Now, it's not going to be tomorrow, maybe not next week or next month, but we'll survive. So sometimes it's easy to lose hope and to be desperate, to be sad or confined. But you know what? We will get over this one too. Now, the government of Qatar has been doing a very good job of trying to keep the population healthy. The shops are closed, people are confined, but we still can go out and walk a little bit. So it's relatively a good job. The hospital system is very good, world class. So when people get sick, they can be treated and they can see doctors. As far as the contagion rate, well, it comes and goes. So the government now is expanding testing to make sure that anyone who has it is aware of that. Overall, like a good situation, not as good as it will be in a few weeks, but right now there's some talk about getting better or lifting the restrictions in a few weeks from now. So there is room to be optimistic. Again, as you mentioned before, there is a problem with the economy. That's a different situation. But at the very least, in the human side, fewer people are getting contagion, fewer people are dying. So this is a good sign.
Thank you, Pablo, and thanks for bringing optimism, which is something that definitely we need to use much more in our conversations. David, you can let us know a little bit about Connecticut, and I mean, being German and having soccer in a couple of weeks. What are your views on, and how are you visioning this from the US?
What are my views on soccer and about 5 substitutes? That's a different conversation. Look, I'll tell you, I'm going to be perhaps a little bit more pessimistic here. I think the situation in the US is catastrophic. And by catastrophic, I don't mean that we have scenes like the horrible images from northern Italy that got everybody's attention about 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago. But you know, the US has 1.3 million confirmed cases. The actual number is probably higher. 77,000 people have lost their lives. To put that in perspective, New York City has 165,000 cases, and that's more than Germany. And you're not even looking at active cases. In terms of active cases, the US is far ahead of everybody else. The economic impact is dramatic. More than 20 million people have lost their jobs. We'll talk about how different countries have responded. The Scandinavian countries, some of the European countries, some of the smaller Asian countries have had fairly effective policies in place to prevent the sort of initial rise in joblessness. As you know, in the US, the default reaction when a business encounters the kind of downturn that businesses here have encountered is to lay people off. You know, 9 million people in hospitality alone have lost their jobs. And in the US, that means potentially no more access to health insurance. And we're seeing again, as we did in the 1930s, lines of people lining up and looking for food assistance. And I'll say that, and I apologize perhaps for being passionate about this and not completely neutral. In the wealthiest country in the world, you shouldn't be in a situation where people within weeks of something like this happening have to line up to get food handouts. But that's the situation that we're in. You know, unemployment rate of 15%. And perhaps what is most frustrating is that this sacrifice has not necessarily led to comprehensive plans and systems that were put in place in order to deal with the next phase. So you asked about Connecticut. Connecticut, fortunately, is in a better shape. We're a fairly densely populated state, but also a fairly wealthy state. We have first-rate research universities and hospitals. And so Connecticut is doing quite well. California is doing quite well in comparison to the US. And so, you know, plans are being put in place, systems, testing is ramping up and so on. The challenge, of course, that the US has is that you have a decentralized system of government. Every state is coming up with their own plans and their own protocols, but you have a lot of mobility across states. And so unlike, you know, a Switzerland or a Qatar, where you can temporarily close borders and really focus on bringing down the number of active cases and put in place testing and protocols and so on. In the US, you have a very large country with a lot of mobility, but very fragmented and heterogeneous responses. So all of that is to say that while I'm incredibly impressed by the scientists and the doctors and many business leaders that we'll talk about and how they're stepping up, I think the US still has a lot ahead of it in order to you know, get on top of this crisis. And I think, unfortunately, people will continue to suffer, businesses will continue to suffer, and at least some of them unnecessarily so.
Thank you for bringing back some definitely reality of what's going on in our north neighbor here in Mexico. You talk a little bit about what we do. I mean, we are all in education. We are devoted to our communities, to our students, to our faculty, to families. We moved at EGADE in Tecnológico Monterrey 50-some days ago on March 12th to an online model. Well, something between remote at the beginning, making it more online as we did progress into the time, and probably are in similar operational model. Let me combine this with this question about when we will be back to something we used to, or with something we are more familiar with, and how do you think this, let's call it new normal, probably one of the most used words in the last weeks, how do you think this new normal will look for your institutions and for the educational industry as a whole? Maybe Dominique, to keep the same order. You wanna start?
I think one of the big lessons that we have learned recently is that it's very difficult to predict the future. So I think that for any businessman or any dean of business school, you need to be prepared with all kinds of scenarios. And for us in education, actually IMD is very focused on executive education. It has been a catastrophe because, you know, we have usually about 9,000 people from about 100 countries coming to IMD every year. And we go and deliver programs around the world. So now that, you know, we cannot fly or people cannot come to us, we had to very quickly rethink our business model and adopt, you know, online learning. So we have all discovered Zoom, and I think we will learn some interesting lesson from this particular technology. I think it has some pros and also some cons. And I think for us, you know, we were very focused on executive education. And then what we have realized is that you need to diversify the portfolio. You need to diversify the risk because, you know, all the business school in Europe who had, you know, a master degree, etc., obviously have a more stable stream of revenues than when you have when you are in executive education. So executive education was our strength. I think it's still our strength, but we had to dramatically revisit, you know, everything we do. The good thing is that we have been able to mobilize everybody. And I think we had a chat yesterday with numbers of colleagues. I think it has been the common, I would say, learning that all the business schools around the world have learned is that it has enabled us to mobilize a lot of energies, and the mood is positive despite the challenges.
Thank you, Dominique. Pablo, how are you guys doing things at HEC in Qatar?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. One of the things that happened to me, at least, when this whole thing started, was it was disconcerting, and you don't know what's going on. You try to understand, make sense of reality. And a good friend for me, at least, because I guess I have a humanistic background, is to study history and read what happened before. And I read about plagues that happened many times in the history of humanity. I tried to understand what happened during the time and then after. And I reread La Peste d'Albert Camus, who talks precisely about that, and the same thing. So without going back into the history of plagues, one of the things that it seems to me, at least I think seems correct, is that big catastrophes such as plagues accelerate transformations that are already latent in society. So when we try to think about the new normal, well, we don't really know what it's going to be. I cannot predict, and Dominique is right, we can't really predict the future. But at least there are some trends that are quite powerful, right? Some of the trends are geopolitical, and we're not going to talk about this because this is not the place. But some have to do with education, and that is the essence of your question. So education was becoming much more technological oriented. They were using many more devices and techniques. And the funny thing is that some of the techniques were already available, but we're not really using them. We're not deploying them because there is some inertia. We like the ways we do things, and that's complicated. I don't predict, because I don't want to use that word, but I see an acceleration of those tools. And then there's very, very difficult to go back once you start. Some online is going to take place, obviously. Some blended is going to take place. And here, sitting next to virtually, at least, to David, and David was one of the pioneers of blended education a while ago. He created some very good programs. So I expect to see more of that. I mean, our reflection is very simple. We have courses, we teach things, and we have three categories. Certain things we teach, in fact, are much better online. They accelerate learning. They adapt the online learning, adjust to the pace of the student. So when you do that, the people learn better. I'm talking about young students, pre-experienced, but also in executive education. Certain things could be made a lot better with some thinking. They're not there yet, but they could be. And certain things you cannot teach online. There is no way, right? So you can have Skype with your family, but you cannot kiss your mother through Skype. I mean, you never will. So this reflection of what are the things that can be done through technology, the things that cannot be done through technology, and how to deploy more complex programs, but based on the technologies and the tools that we had before. I guess that's the way it's going to be in the future. I mean, as far as when we go back to normal, well, really, God knows. I was optimistic at the beginning, but this is not going to be tomorrow. It's going to take a while. And chances are there's going to be new waves and so forth. Now, if you ask me, when are we going to be able to fly into, I don't know, Oman and teach a class and then leave, have professors flying from, in my case, from Paris or from Switzerland or whatever, into a different location, stay 3 days and go back, and the participants fly from all over the world, it's going to take a while. It's going to be a while before we can do that. That's why I think technologies are going to help. They can never replace, but they're going to help a lot.
Thank you, Pablo. David, you want to add? Please.
I mean, I think, both Dominique and Pablo captured it really well. I mean, our perspective here at Yale is quite similar. I would underscore what was said before, that undergraduates, MBA students, executive MBA students, and then senior executives and executive education programs have different needs, have different proclivities when it comes to technology, and I think we as leaders in business schools will have to adapt and find the right combination of tools, methodologies that supports the learning of the particular group of participants. But that's reasonable to expect that of us, and so I think as Pablo and Dominique have said, the technologies that we're now working with will be part of our toolkit. Ignacio, you've been using them for a long time at HEC de Monterrey. I remember, I think, learning that even in the 1990s, you're using satellites to beam around lessons across the different campuses, right? I remember being inspired when the terrible earthquake struck a couple of years ago, and not inspired by the earthquake, inspired by your response, seeing how quickly you moved classes online then. And so, we all had to do this now and learn some of the lessons that you had learned previously. But I think we've also learned, as Pablo said, that there's certain things that are harder to do online. I mean, I can tell you, if we told our students right now, you can come back to campus, they'd be there in 15 minutes. They'd be there on the weekend because they want to actually have that in-person experience. And so I think, our toolkit has become bigger as educators and as schools. And the next phase, I think, of this is really not going to be, how do we substitute technology for this, but rather, how do we craft the right kind of learning environment and learning solution for our clients, for our learners, for our students, given where they are, given what their goals are. And I'm excited about that prospect and that aspect of our work going forward.
Yeah.
Oh, please, Dominique.
Well, I think, we have been accelerating, as David was saying, the technology has been around for some time, but in 3 months or in less than 3 months, we have been accelerating things which would have taken probably 3 years. There is a joke in our profession that the two most conservative institutions in the world is the Catholic Church and the university. These are the most difficult institutions to change. At least I think the university is changing. But to me, the challenge is not so much to change the student behavior, although they need help. They need help to learn with this new technology. The challenge is going to change the professors, because a professor who is very good face-to-face is not necessarily good in front of a camera. So we all have to learn from, the Walt Disney and the CNN of his world on how to behave in front of a camera. And what we have realized also is that, if you speak for more than 45 minutes or even 20 minutes with the new generation, people get bored very easily. So it's from a pedagogical perspective, it's a major revolution. And actually, I think that many schools have taken their professors through intensive training on how to behave in front of a camera, like if you were an anchor at CNN.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I agree with that. I think it's a very, very good comment. I mean, right now, many people are running on adrenaline and the desperation of needing to do something. But we need to acknowledge the fact that teaching online is not doing a class with a camera. It's not the same thing in the classroom, but you put a camera and the same thing. So we need to start thinking about deeper how people learn or don't learn. What are the tricks? So you just gave a few where you don't talk for 45 minutes. You do other things. So we need to start thinking about that. Some people have started a long time ago, like Ignacio and his school, i.e. Business School, for example, David. but we still need to think how to learn. And there's another thing I want to say. The experience that you have at Yale is not just about the content of the classes. It's another experience, right? You learn not just by what you learn in the classes. You learn by what you by living there, being with other people. The top schools will keep that because it's irreproducible. Other schools may be a different story, but for the top schools, this experience of being on campus, that's not going to change. The university has been very difficult, has been around for, I don't know, 1,000 years at least. It will survive 1,000 years probably, not in the same shape, but the big ones, they will be there in a long time too.
Yes, something interesting is moving this conversation we're having to any other industry. We're talking about faculty moving into a space that for some of them was not explored, and they don't feel comfortable, and you ask them and they get into remote learning, which is exactly what you mentioned. I pick up my Zoom and I do my teaching, and it doesn't work, of course. Now we moving necessarily, and some institutions started as far as 2000, i.e. we launched the first online program, the Global Executive MBA, you guys remember. Before that, at HEC de Monterrey in the 70s and 80s, we were doing satellite and TV learning. But let's think now about any other industry and having people also confined at home officing, selling insurance, doing banking or financial operations, or even trying to give consulting advice, or being a doctor, a dermatologist in online consulting. What is the learning process for those that were probably way beyond the schools into that? What are your thoughts on that? And then I will move into leadership question.
Sure. I mean, I think if I can jump in on this one, I mean, what this situation does is it drives an unbundling of things that we have usually consumed sort of jointly, and helps us figure out what the essence is. Pablo talked about, you know, there's faculty at Yale, there's networking at Yale, there's a beautiful campus where you want to spend some time and be inspired. And some of those things can more easily transition online, right? You think about your local restaurant, you know, many of them have switched to takeout only. And so all of a sudden, you know, you have the food without the experience of being in the place. And, you know, in some cases, the food is so great, you don't need the experience there. In other cases, you realize, man, it's really the experience. And if I don't have that, then, you know, the food could come from somewhere else. You know, that's happening. You know, it's happening with gyms. It's happening with orchestras. It's, you know, we're seeing this sort of separation of some of the essence, if you will, of the product or of the service from the way it has traditionally been delivered. And in some cases, we're going to learn that that separation is quite possible. In other cases, we're going to realize it just isn't the same, and it's going to come together again. But I think, you know, and Pablo and Dominique can speak to this much better with their experience working with companies around innovation. But what it does is it opens up this innovation space where you ask yourself some questions that you wouldn't have asked before, right? Is it really necessary to do all of these things together, and which ones can we separate and which ones can we replicate? And I think we're seeing that across a broad range of businesses as they're adapting in the moment. And some of what they'll learn over the next couple of months and have already learned is going to transform their business models and their industries probably forever.
Some industries are going probably to be affected more than others, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, think about the transportation industry. I mean, I'm sitting on a couple of boards. One is in China, and you know, I had to go to China before, so it's one day to go there, one day to stay, one day to come back with a jet lag, and then we did these board meetings online, and then we all realized that, well, it's much better to do it online than to do it physically. So, you know, I think that a lot of people are realize that you can do a lot of things online. Obviously, conduct business online. Talk to your suppliers, to your customers, you know, avoid a lot of traffic. So some industries are likely to be very, very, very affected, I believe, by the post-coronavirus situation. And others may go back to normal, because it's clear that we all like to go to our favorite restaurant to have nachos and tequila.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan, Dominique. Let me change a little bit the scope and talk about leadership, which is the our webinar series main title. We had one of the first webinars we did have early in March here at the EGADE Business School. We put together a couple of relevant Mexican businessmen and one of our visiting professors, Raj Shishodia, Conscious Business, and coming from Babson, to discuss what was going to be the impact of all this situation on capitalism, the change of model that we were sort of coming or seeing coming into the equation. And I would like to ask you this question. I mean, do you think that this coronavirus crisis is going to speed up this process and this change in the profile of leaders that our societies, industries, and companies do need? Do you think this vision of conscious businesses will come into reality stronger after whenever we come back to a new normal? What are your views on this?
Well, let me start here. Yeah,
Pablo,
listen, context matters a whole lot. So the type of leadership you need depends on the context in which you are. Now, we said a few minutes ago, we agree that it's very difficult to predict what the future is going to be, right? There are going to be changes. We don't really know what changes. We have intuition that some changes are going to happen. So depending on what world we see in the future, we'll have one type of leader or the other. Maybe we get even more capitalism, more brutal. Or maybe we have a kinder society. Well, who knows? Chances are the world is going to be less globalized, so there's going to be like leadership more local and less global. But this is pure speculation. The funny thing though is that there will be transformations and they will be massive, because when you look at history, you realize that certain things that you take for granted, they were not there before. They were created one day. My fantastic story is the story of purgatory. Purgatory, which is supposed to be in Christian doctrine, in Catholic doctrine, started one day and ended one day. It was created by a council. It was destroyed by a council. It was eliminated by a council. So the idea of going to work from 9 to 5 and going to a building where we all together, that started one day and not long ago, about 100, 120 years ago. Before, people didn't go to work, not in the sense that we understand. So maybe we're going to go back to that one in which we work, of course, but we don't necessarily have to go to work, all be gathered together at the same time, simultaneously in the same place to actually get something done. And technologies may help with that. Maybe we don't have to work 5 days a week. I mean, why 5 days a week and not 6 or 4 or 3? So there will be some changes. Now, what I wanted to say to answer your question, because about leadership, is depending on what world emerges, you need one kind of leadership or the other, because the type of leadership is essentially context dependent. In some cases, you need very decisive, very rapid leaders who maybe are not that compassionate or caring. In other cases, you need caring leaders, because that's the way you push people, you move people, and you create a sense of community. I hope, and I think we have some evidence, there's going to be a more caring world, more concern about the environment, about people, about health, about their well-being. I hope it's going to be that way. I think that's going to be one trend that's going to come from COVID. But there will be deep changes, that's for sure.
Thank you, Pablo.
Okay.
You want to add something, David, and then I will move into the audience questions.
Sure, maybe just a quick reflection along those lines, right? I mean, as Pablo said before, a situation like this accelerates our trends already underway, but I think it also amplifies existing divisions and injustices. And maybe again, I'm saying this based on where I sit, physically, very fortunate that we live in a house. We have a great internet connection. My wife and I can work from home. Our kids go to a good school and they converted the curriculum. But I can tell you, a mile or two from where I am, there are often 3 families under one roof. We're trying to protect the elderly, but some people, work in businesses where they're being compelled to work. They're stocking the shelves in supermarkets. They're custodial staff in hospitals and elsewhere, and they're putting their grandparents at risk who might be living with them in the same house. And if there is an internet connection, the bandwidth isn't sufficient for kids to continue to go to school. And alone here in my community in New Haven, when this thing got started, only 10% of public school children had access to a laptop through donations in the community. That has now increased. But what I'm trying to illustrate with this is that the gap between the haves and the have-nots has just become so much bigger. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing how some societies have systems in place to ensure nobody falls behind, and in others it's a lot harder. And I do think that as you mentioned earlier, these kinds of challenges often lead not just to economic change, but also to social change. And there's going to be demand for some social change. And the question is, how is it going to get channeled? It can get channeled in the direction in which Pablo suggested, more caring, compassionate society, where we realize that we're only as strong as the weakest among us, which is very much the idea behind public health. But it can also go in a very different direction, where increasingly some are left behind, and the question is, that will not be a pretty process, because losers in any kind of large social transformation, advocate for themselves and put pressure on others and ask for change and so on. So I'm being a bit vague here, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I do think that we're confronting some really, really important questions. And I don't think we should take for granted that when it comes to social political orders, everything will go back to normal. And that has some real implications for business leaders. What is it that they're going to be advocating for? Is it just about the loan that is going to keep their business afloat? That's important. But what about the small business next door that also employs people in their community? What is the contribution that they're willing to make sure everybody has access to healthcare, for example? Are we going to use this momentum to address other big challenges around sustainability or poverty and so on? Or do we say, well, we got to get our stock price back to where it was pre-crisis, and everything else now is secondary? So there are going to be real opportunities for leaders to step up and to think beyond just their immediate P&L about how we're going to reconstruct societies in a way that makes them more resilient and stronger, and ultimately more just and more fair.
I think it's already happening. It's already happening. We see this polarization already happening here, because you have some people indeed who live comfortably and who say, look, maybe we should take advantage of this post-crisis to, care about the planet. Look at, the sky is more blue, and so on and so on. And some people will say, well, this is all nice, but I need to feed my family. And we see the tension already happening in different European countries, and not only in Europe. I guess you see it happening in many countries where people need a job to survive. So this is going to be politically, I think, very, very destabilizing, probably.
Well, one of the things that's going to disappear, this idea that very efficient balance sheet, lowest cost producing, it doesn't less shave a cent to go to another location, because it is, as a friend of mine who's a Wall Street trader says, it's like picking pennies in front of a steamroller. Yes, you save a penny, but the moment something goes wrong, you get really flattened by a steamroller. So maybe you want to pay a little bit more, have some slack. That's one of the lessons of the COVID. If you don't have any slack, you're out of business. Yeah, but you're super efficient, you don't have slack. That's the whole idea of the just-in-time, is have no stock. So when you have no stock, the moment you stop the supplies, that's it. You have to stop production. So that maybe there's going to be a reflection on how much slack you need, and the limits of efficiency, and part of that, the limits of low-cost, super low-cost producing of everything. Maybe localizing back, and again, I'm not a super big fan of the discourse behind that, but the localizing things, shorter supply chains is probably not as bad as we made it up to be.
Yeah, this is actually, Pablo, one of the things we're hoping here in Mexico that will happen. One of the silver linings of this situation for Mexico will be that, exactly. Shorten up a little bit the supply chain, probably end with the dominance of China as the only world provider, and bring closer the production of goods and services. So hopefully Mexico will benefit from that in many of our societies. We've been talking about a few trends. I keep moving with the audience questions. We have like 9 minutes left. I think we mentioned a few of these, let's say, mega trends that we are envisioning, like coming or already here with us, that we're talking about a change in leadership we've been mentioning, a change in this globalization vision that we as a society were part of. What are the big trends are you envisioning that will be part of the after COVID situation for all of us in our industries? What are these things that will happen? And by the way, we've been discussing and talking about not being able to predict the future. But I believe we need also to be part of reinvention of that future. All of us in our responsibilities, in our modest or more prominent industries. What are these things that you see that will be completely different?
Well, we mentioned a few, I guess. We can't mention them all. But one thing I want to clarify, that if I tell you, be careful when you leave the building, there is a hole, and you leave the building and you fall in the hole, that's not an accident, that's not unpredictable. Now, as far as the pandemic, we knew very well there was going to be one. We didn't know the time. And there's a video circulating of President Bush and President Obama saying precisely that there will be a pandemic, but don't know the moment. Now, we know there's going to be an earthquake in California, a big one. We don't know when. Now, we act as if we don't know because, hey, the risk is so small, the consequences are catastrophic. Now, certain cases, certain things happen by accident, but certainly we know fairly well. Anyway, let's get back to the changes in industries.
So,
you know,
I mean,
go ahead, David.
No, you go ahead.
Before the crisis, there was everybody was talking about agility. That was a new buzzword in management. Every company was saying, well, you know, and of course, when you were asking executive, well, what does it mean to be agile? You had very vague question. And at IMD, we came up with an interesting, some of my colleagues came up with an interesting model, which they call the HAVE model, H-A-V-E. And H stood for, or still stand for, humility. Obviously, the leader of today must have the humility to say, I don't know. And we see it even with our politicians here in Europe who say, well, we don't know. I mean, we are not doctors. We cannot predict what is going to happen tomorrow. So we see people being much more humble today, okay? A means adaptability. So it means you need indeed to think about all kinds of scenarios, because today you don't have any excuse not to think that, you know, this black swan that Pablo was mentioning is going to happen. V means vision. Even though it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in the next 2 months, we may have a second wave. I mean, again, a few weeks ago, nobody would have predicted what would have happened with the price of oil. However, you cannot go to your people tomorrow morning and say, well, you know, we don't know where the world is going. So you need to give, as an executive, you know, a long-term perspective and hopefully an optimistic one to your people. Leaders have a duty of optimism. And I believe that, you know, in this very unpredictable world, you need to have a good story to tell, which is credible and which is going to give a sense of long-term orientation to your people. And E stands for engagement. You need to engage all the stakeholders. And this is one of the most beautiful things that we have seen over the last 2 months, is that, you know, people are much more engaged. All kind of, we're talking about, you know, all kind of stakeholders, the state, the citizen, the communities, the businesses, and so on and so on. So that would be
that is a great point, Dominique. Just this morning we were having a executive meeting here at Tecnológico de Monterrey, and we were looking at some results that the organization achieved over the last couple of months. And we were like, wow, it's really unbelievable. I mean, and it comes from exactly what you mentioned. We're serving with a completely different mindset, much more cooperative, open, resilient, with humility, and results even in this very difficult situation that we as industries live are really amazing. And this is a key point that I hope we will move into the future as well. I have one more question for you guys. And to close, let's go back to our industries. Let's go back to education. And we're thinking about how Tecnológico de Monterrey, how EGADE Business School will be operating in, let's say, December from now. And we're looking definitely at different scenarios. What is this scenario planning that you guys are doing? And if we're gonna use a different strategy and different channels that we used to do only 3 months ago, how these could look like? What are you envisioning here?
So I'm going to apply Dominique's framework around agility to what we're trying to do at Yale, because, and let me take them a little bit out of order, right? You know, there is a vision to deliver the best possible educational experience. There is the humility to know or to realize that we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if there's going to be a second wave or not. We don't know if testing is going to be at scale or not. And so that means you need to have the adaptability around this. So for us specifically, this means we're working on 4 separate plans, right? One where, you know, we can do things on campus, another one where everything has to be online, something where some students are going to be able to be on campus, but others are not. And then there's another one where, you know, 1 week we're on campus and 1 week we're not. And we have to prepare for all of those things at the same time, because we'll probably need a mix of them. And then finally, if you take E, engagement, right? We can't make those decisions in the dean's office alone. We have to speak with our faculty. We have to speak with our students. You know, I run our executive MBA program here. We put together 2 options for our students just for the month of July. You know, we did a poll to inform our proposal development. We did a town hall, presented the ideas. We got feedback in real time. We polled the students again. We put something together, and it's not optimal, but everybody feels that their views were taken into account. And there's this real opportunity, as you described it, as both of you described it, to say, we're all in this together. We don't really have a playbook. We're going to have to figure this out together. Let's use the best judgment we have, the best information, be ready at any point to update our assumption. This is not a time to be doctrinaire or dogmatic or closed-minded. We just have to recognize, exactly as Dominique said, you know, we got to be humble, we got to be adaptable, have a vision, keep our eye on the big picture, and constantly engage with all of our stakeholders to make it happen. So I'm taking that from our session. It's exactly the right set of leadership attributes I think that you need to navigate this challenging environment.
Just one word I would like to add. I mean, I'm not going to repeat what Dominique and David said beautifully. I'm focusing on removing the ties that bind, the shackles. I mean, Dominique, you mentioned it before about how tough it is. I mean, sometimes we are in a mental prison. I'm working very hard to remove what prevents us from changing rapidly, and to have the agility that both my colleagues mentioned there. Certain rules, certain procedures, certain ways of doing things, and we need to do it this way because that's the way we did it before. So that we're trying to avoid all that. A colleague of mine just said that yesterday, and I think I have to apologize. I was rude to him and said, well, we have never done this before. He said, well, on that account, you're never going to die because you have never died before, right? So, so let's remove the shackles, really. That's my concern from the organizational perspective, how to make sure that people can unleash their creativity and find solutions that are going to be adapted to the reality that we still don't know what it's going to be.
That is great. Pablo, Dominique?
Well, no, I think I think David and Pablo said it beautifully. So, I think indeed management has always been the art of balancing things, right? Short term, long term, trust and control, and so on and so on. So I think we are going through a new exercise on how to balance the danger and the opportunity. You know that the Chinese they write with characters. They don't work with an alphabet like we do. So, and as you may know, I did my PhD in Japan. So in Japanese, the word for crisis is kiki, and the first ki means danger. That's the Chinese character for danger, and the second ki means opportunity. And this is what this crisis is all about, is, being very careful about, what could happen tomorrow. And I think we have to be extremely adaptive, humble to think about, the worst case scenarios. And at the same time, get all the opportunities that this danger can provide. So that would be my advice to the people who are watching it, watch out, but at the same time, you know, take advantage of all the opportunities that are coming up.
Well, while we're on, you know, sort of wisdom coming out of Asia, there's one Chinese proverb that that I encountered recently that I've been trying to keep front of mind in this situation, and it's that what you need in a situation like this are leaders who have cool heads, a warm heart, and dirty hands.
Very good.
And I think if you look at the organizations that are doing well, the leaders who are doing well, you see that combination.
Muchas gracias, David. Cambio al castellano porque realmente hoy podríamos haber hecho nuestro webinar en castellano, tanto Dominique como David, como Pablo. Pablo es medio francés, medio argentino, David alemán, aunque vive en Estados Unidos, y Dominique, pues como veis, es un ciudadano del mundo, que ha estudiado en Japón, habla chino, vive en Suiza, en fin, podríamos haber hecho esto en castellano también, pero pues hoy un poco respetando la internacionalización, el foco internacional de nuestros invitados, pues lo hemos desarrollado en inglés. Quería agradeceros muchísimo el tiempo que habéis dedicado ya a estar con nosotros en EGADE Business School, en estos webinars de la serie de liderazgo, a nuestros asistentes, pues muchos de ellos alumnos o candidatos, empresarios, bueno, pues como nosotros, pues gente que está por un lado preocupada y por otro lado pues poniendo soluciones a nuestro día a día, a lo que hacemos y también por supuesto pues intentando aportar valor a nuestras comunidades y con ese ímpetu, ¿no? Desde el punto de vista de la solidaridad. También muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Os dejamos con el Satisfaction Survey y también me gustaría anunciaros nuestro próximo webinar que tendrá lugar el próximo miércoles y, bueno, pues con una persona muy relevante para la institución, para México, para nuestras sociedades, como es Salvador Alba, nuestro presidente del Tecnológico. Mi jefe, es correcto, aunque ya se retira, ya, ahora tengo otro, y entonces pues vamos a tener una conversación sobre estos temas que yo creo hemos tratado con Dominique, con David y con Pablo, sobre el liderazgo, sobre cómo nos vamos posicionando para lo que viene y cómo podemos también impactar profundamente pues, nuestras sociedades desde la humildad y desde lo que hacemos. Cierro aquí, Dominique, merci bien. Vielen Dank, David. A ti, Pablo, en castellano. Muchas gracias. Y
gracias.
pues
Adiós.
ha sido un placer teneros con nosotros. Gracias y gracias a todos nuestros asistentes.
Gracias.
Buen fin de semana.